Picture a chainsaw. You probably imagine a burly lumberjack slicing through a giant redwood, or maybe a guy surviving the zombie apocalypse. But what if I told you it wasn't invented for wood, it was invented by doctors? To use on pregnant women. Yeah, your favorite bloody slasher weapon was originally a medical tool designed for human childbirth. Why is history like this? Welcome to Fascinating Facts. Today we are looking at the horrifying true story of... Let's set the scene. It is the late 1700s, and medical science is basically just a guy in a fancy coat making things up as he goes. Doctors back then didn't believe in germs, they didn't wash their hands, and their solution to a headache was usually just draining half your blood into a bucket. And if you needed surgery, anesthesia didn't exist. You were awake. For everything. Doctor, I am in agonizing pain. Fear not, madam. Bite down on this filthy wooden stick I found in the dirt while I chug this questionable whiskey. For my nerves, obviously. Now imagine going into labor in this terrifying era. Having a baby was basically a boss fight you couldn't pause. And if the baby got stuck in the birth canal, a cesarean section was practically a guaranteed death sentence due to infection. So, doctors came up with a brilliant workaround. A procedure called a symphysiotomy. If the baby couldn't fit, the doctor would take a small, regular surgical knife and manually hack away at the cartilage and bone of the woman's pelvis to widen the gap, while she was completely conscious. Oh my gosh, what are you doing with that knife? Just some light carpentry, madam. I am slowly chiseling through your skeletal structure. I am doing a fantastic job. I am rage quitting this pregnancy. Why is this happening? Nurse, hold her down. She clearly doesn't appreciate my elite medical skills. This process was an absolute nightmare. Because they were using a tiny knife on tough human bone, the surgery took forever. The knife would constantly get stuck, the doctors were exhausted, and the poor patients were crying literal waterfalls the entire time. It was slow, it was terrifying, and quite frankly, dude, uncool. The medical community realized they needed a way to slice through the pelvic bone much, much faster to save both the mother and the baby. They needed an upgrade. They needed a mechanical miracle. Enter two Scottish doctors, John Aitken and James Jeffrey. These guys looked at the slow, torturous knife method and thought, bro, this is taking way too long. I have a golf game at 3. They didn't necessarily care about making the procedure less horrifying to look at. They just wanted speed. They channeled their absolute best mad scientist energy and decided to invent something straight out of a steampunk horror movie. They called it the osteotome. If you looked at the blueprints for this thing, you would think it was a pocket watch designed by a supervillain. It didn't look like the massive gas-powered beasts we use today. It was a metal oval with a serrated chain wrapped around it. At the bottom, it had a little hand crank. You turned the crank, and the tiny metal teeth spun around the track in a continuous, endless loop. Yes, a hand-cranked miniature chainsaw. Now imagine being the very first patient to test this out. You are already in unimaginable pain, and your extremely arrogant doctor approaches the bed holding a strange, ticking metal contraption. Fear not, madam. I have invented a revolutionary tool. Is that a clock covered in shark teeth? I'm just gonna wind it up real quick. Crank, crank, crank. Why is it ticking? Why does it sound hungry? Hold still. This will only take a second. No! Get that demon gear away from me! Someone yeet this man out the window! But here is the absolute wildest part. It actually worked. It worked incredibly well. Instead of a doctor clumsily hacking away for an hour, the osteotome sliced effortlessly through the pelvic bone in seconds. It saved the mother, it saved the baby, and it was hailed as a massive medical breakthrough. But let's be honest, the visual of a manic doctor furiously cranking a mini chainsaw right between your legs, pure, unadulterated trauma. This enraged literally every patient who ever saw it coming towards them, who panicked severely. For decades, the chainsaw stayed strictly in the medical field. It wasn't just for childbirth anymore. Doctors looked at this magical spinning death loop and realized it was great for slicing through all kinds of bones. Got a shattered leg? Bring in the bone saw. Need a quick amputation? Wind up the tiny chainsaw. It was the undisputed champion of the operating room. But the jump from slicing human femurs to slicing massive redwood trees didn't happen overnight. It took over a century before someone looked at this bloody medical tool and had the weirdest eureka moment in history. Enter the early 1900s. The logging industry was booming, but chopping down giant trees with regular axes was exhausting. An inventor named Samuel Benz was watching doctors effortlessly carve through solid bone with these mechanical chain blades, and a light bulb went off in his head. Hey, wood is basically just earth bone, right? I mean, biologically speaking, absolutely not, but what if we made it gigantic and fed it gasoline? And just like that, the medical bone saw got a massive, terrifying glow-up. Inventors took the tiny, delicate, hand-cranked loop of teeth and scaled it up into an absolute monster. They swapped out the hand cranks for heavy, roaring, gas-powered engines. These early logging chainsaws were so unbelievably massive and heavy that it took 2 grown men just to hold one. Now, imagine being a traditional lumberjack in the 1920s. You're used to the quiet, peaceful rhythm of swinging an axe in the serene forest. Suddenly, 2 guys show up carrying a 100-pound metal beast that smells like fuel. Hey guys, we brought the new tree cutter. Vroom, vroom, roar. What is that demon noise? It's a giant version of a doctor's bone saw. It runs on tiny explosions. I am rage quitting this forest. The trees are crying, and so am I. The lumberjacks were crying literal waterfalls over the deafening noise, but they couldn't deny the results. The giant chainsaws tore through massive trees in a fraction of the time it took with an axe. The logging industry was changed forever, and the chainsaw officially left the hospital and entered the woods. And so, we reach the ultimate, ridiculous irony of human history. A tool that was originally invented to literally bring new life into the world is now the universal symbol of destroying it. Think about it. You see a chainsaw today and you don't think, ah yes, the beautiful miracle of childbirth. No! You think of lumberjacks clear-cutting a forest or Leatherface chasing screaming teenagers through a cornfield in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hey, what weapon should our new horror movie villain use? How about an 18th century Scottish obstetrics tool? Bro, that is deeply disturbing. I love it. We took a delicate, tiny medical instrument meant to save mothers and babies, fed it gasoline, made it loud enough to wake the dead, and turned it into the ultimate machine of destruction. It just goes to show that humanity's greatest, most useful tools usually have the darkest, weirdest origins. We just look at a terrifying historical accident and say, you know what? Let's make it bigger. So, the next time you hear a chainsaw revving up in the distance, just remember, it could be worse. You could be an 18th century pregnant woman. If you want to discover the insane origins of more things you use every day, subscribe to Fascinating Facts.